Welcome to Sportpen. Picture this, Rome 1960. The world's watching, really holding its breath for the 7th Olympiad Games. This wasn't just, another sports thing. It felt like a melting pot, didn't it?
Yeah.
Global hopes, amazing performances, and really a turning point in how we experience the Olympics.
Oh, absolutely. August 25th to September 11th, 1960. Yeah, those are the key dates. 83 nations, think about that. Some showing up for the very first time. Morocco, San Marino, Sudan, Tunisia.
Wow.
And the backdrop, like you said, Italy was, they were eager to step back onto the world stage after the war, and they'd waited 54 years to host. So there was this real sense of national purpose.
Yeah, ready to make a statement,
Yeah.
and the scale was just massive. 150 events.
That's across 17 sports.
Everything from diving to weightlifting, just incredible athletic range.
It really was. And, within all that competition, some truly legendary stories started taking shape. We're talking a barefoot marathon winner.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
Unbelievable.
A young boxer who, his name would become basically synonymous with greatness. And always, always that undercurrent of the Cold War just adding tension to everything.
Okay, yeah, let's definitely get into that. But first, how did people see all this? Because Rome was a huge leap for TV coverage, wasn't it?
It really was. The first games to be fully covered by television, and the reach was, unprecedented for the time. Live broadcasts through Eurovision.
Right, that network connecting European countries.
Exactly, reaching loads of people there. And then, for the first time ever, folks in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico could watch the Summer Olympics commercially.
That's a huge shift. Suddenly it's this global shared experience, but also, a platform for nations and money eventually.
Precisely. But it wasn't instantaneous like today. Getting those pictures across the Atlantic, that was a whole operation.
How did they manage that then?
Well, this is where you see the tech of the time. They actually taped the footage each day in Rome.
Taped it.
Yep. And then physically flew the tapes to CBS in New York.
Wow. Flew them every day.
Every day. And Jim McKay, who basically became Mr. Olympics for so many people, he hosted the daily recap shows, his very first Olympics gig.
No kidding. And CBS paid, nearly $400,000 for the rights?
Just under $400,000, yeah. $394K. Seems like peanuts now, doesn't it?
It really does. But that kind of exposure, even taped and flown, that changed everything. The IOC must have noticed.
Oh, they definitely did. You could see the writing on the wall. This is the beginning of the Olympics as a major commercial powerhouse. It absolutely shaped future TV deals.
It makes sense. Compare that to, say, London in '48.
Yeah.
That was televised, but tiny audience, right? Just the UK mostly.
Exactly. BBC coverage, limited reach. Rome was a massive jump, and you can see the momentum building from there. Look ahead, just 4 years to Tokyo '64. The Scientific Olympics.
With the electronic timing.
Right. Seiko bringing in fully automated timing, accurate to 1/100 of a second. That kind of modernization, Rome really kicked that off.
It's amazing how fast things started changing. Now, thinking about symbolism, you can't really talk Olympics without thinking about Jesse Owens in Berlin '36.
Absolutely not. Owens's performance, flying in the face of Hitler's propaganda, that was incredibly powerful. It kind of established this theme, didn't it? Athletic triumph over politics. It sets the stage for understanding how much symbolic weight some of these Rome moments carried.
And speaking of clashing ideologies, amateurism was a huge sticking point in 1960, especially the U.S. versus the Soviets.
Oh, yeah. That was a really hot topic. I mean, what is an amateur? The Americans were complaining, quite loudly actually, that the Soviet athletes were basically state-funded professionals.
Right, while their own athletes had these super strict rules, often with zero financial help.
Exactly. Strict, sometimes kind of arbitrary rules. It created this real tension between the ideal of amateurism and the reality of being a top athlete. You can see the seeds of professionalization being sown right there.
And some of those rules seem almost absurd now. Like Rafer Johnson, the decathlete, almost getting disqualified for thinking about an acting job.
In Spartacus, yeah. It highlights the perceived hypocrisy, doesn't it? You had these often quite wealthy officials making rules that really squeezed athletes who were pouring their lives into training. It showed the cracks in the system.
But even with those rules, you started seeing, hints of commercialism creeping in, like that German sprinter, Armin Harry.
Oh, the Harry story is brilliant. It really is. So he wins the 100 meters.
Huge achievement.
Massive. And then he pulls this stunt, wears Puma shoes for the race itself.
Okay.
But then switches to Adidas shoes for the medal ceremony.
Get out. Why?
He was trying to get paid by both companies. playing them off against each other. It's kind of hilarious now thinking about today's massive endorsement deals, but it was a really early example of an athlete trying to cash in.
A sneaky pioneer.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's pivot to that Cold War angle, because Rome 1960 was definitely a major front in that battle.
No question. The games were a huge stage for the US-USSR rivalry. And the medal count. Oh boy. It wasn't just about who won more golds. It was framed as proof that our system, our ideology, was better. Propaganda, basically.
And the IOC was caught in the middle, like forcing East and West Germany to compete as one team. That must have been awkward.
Extremely complex. It shows how hard it was for the IOC to keep politics out when the world was so divided. And you had other political flashpoints, too. Calls to ban South Africa over apartheid. They were unsuccessful then, but it was their last appearance for decades.
Right, until 92.
And the whole China-Taiwan situation. China boycotted because Taiwan was allowed to compete as Taiwan or Formosa.
A compromise that made nobody happy, sounds like.
Pretty much. Even the U.S. wasn't thrilled initially. It just showed how tangled sports and global politics were.
But amidst all that tension, there were these really powerful moments, right? Like Rayford Johnson carrying the U.S. flag. First black athlete to do that for the U.S. delegation.
Yeah, that was hugely significant, a really symbolic gesture. Of course, the reality of race relations back in the U.S. was complicated, to say the least. But on the world stage, it sent a message. An aspirational one, maybe?
And it wasn't just symbols, was it? There were these whispers, maybe more than whispers, about the CIA trying to get Soviet athletes to defect.
Well, yeah, the Cold War climate was so intense it seemed to seep into everything. The idea that U.S. athletes like sprinter David Sum or javelin thrower Alcantelo might have been asked to approach Soviet athletes. It speaks volumes about the atmosphere.
Did anyone actually defect because of that?
Well, there were about 155 defections from the Soviet bloc countries during the Games period. But interestingly, Sym's own friend, the Soviet long jumper Igor Turovanesian, didn't defect, so it's a bit murky, but the tension was real.
It sounds like a spy novel playing out behind the scenes. Okay, let's shift focus to the athletes themselves. Some truly iconic figures emerged from Rome. A baby Bicula running the marathon barefoot. That story is just legendary.
It really is. Apparently, the shoes provided by the sponsor didn't fit him comfortably.
So he just didn't wear any.
For a marathon?
He just ran barefoot, the way he often trained, and won. It wasn't just the barefoot aspect, though. It was the first Olympic marathon gold ever won by an African athlete. A monumental moment, finishing under the Arch of Constantine. Just incredible imagery.
Absolutely. And then there's a young boxer, just 18 years old, Cassius Clay.
Later, Muhammad Ali, of course, winning light heavyweight gold. That was the start, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The launch pad for maybe the most famous sports career ever.
They say he loved that medal, right? Slept with it.
Yeah, there's that story. Shows how much it meant to him then. And, the later story about him throwing it in the Ohio River, its validity is debated.
Right, because of racism he faced back home.
Yeah. But the fact the IOC gave him a replacement medal in Atlanta in '96 really underlines the significance of that 1960 win.
And Italy had its own boxing hero too, right? Nino Benvenuti? Oh, huge for the Italians. Middleweight gold. He always said that Olympic gold meant more to him than his professional world titles later on.
Wow.
He became a massive star in Italy, went on to fight the best American boxers in the 70s, and those boxing events were held in the Palazzo dello Sport, one of those amazing new venues.
Another great story. The decathlon. Two UCLA teammates, Rayford Johnson and C.K. Yang, battling it out.
What a narrative. Friends, roommates even, going head-to-head for 10 grueling days. Johnson representing the U.S., Yang representing Taiwan.
And Yang won Taiwan's first ever Olympic medal, right?
He did, the silver. Johnson just edged him out for the gold. It was incredibly close. But the best part, their deep respect and friendship endured. It was sportsmanship at its absolute finest.
Just fantastic. And then Wilma Rudolph. 3 track golds after overcoming childhood polio.
Her story is just inspirational, doesn't even cover it. Polio braces on her legs as a child. Then she wins the 100 meters, the 200 meters, and anchors the 4x100 relay.
And that relay was dramatic too, wasn't it? A bad baton exchange.
Yeah, a fumbled handoff. But she ran an incredible anchor leg, stormed back to win gold. Just amazing determination. She became this huge symbol, American resilience, but also challenging stereotypes about Black women during the Cold War.
A true icon. And one more Italian legend, Edoardo Mongirotti, in fencing.
Ah, yes, the maestro. His team Epée Gold in Rome was part of an incredible career. Think about this. 13 Olympic medals, 6 gold across 5 Olympic Games.
5 games. That's incredible longevity.
Italy's most decorated Olympian ever. And from a famous fencing family, too. Just pure, sustained excellence.
But, the games weren't all triumph. There was tragedy, too. The death of the Danish cyclist Knud Enemark Jensen.
Yes, that was a really dark moment. He collapsed during the 100-kilometer team time trial. Heat stroke was the official cause.
But there were suspicions, weren't there, about drugs?
There were. Amphetamines were suspected, though never definitively proven in his case. But it was the first death of an Olympic competitor during competition since 1912. A real shock.
And it had consequences, didn't it? It spurred action on doping.
Absolutely. It was a major catalyst, directly led to the IOC forming its medical committee in 1961, and the very first official list of banned substances came out in 1967. So that tragedy sadly marked the beginning of serious anti-doping efforts in the Olympics.
A sobering legacy. Okay, finally, let's touch on Rome itself. The games were a chance for the city to modernize, weren't they?
Definitely. It was a big push for infrastructure upgrades, roads, facilities, and what was really cool, I think, was how they used ancient sites.
Like the baths of Caracalla.
Exactly. And the Basilica of Maxentius. Using them as venues created this amazing link, didn't it, between the modern games and ancient Rome, ancient Greece.
Connecting back to the origins.
Yeah. And they built some stunning modern venues, too. Pier Luigi Nervi's designs for the Palazzo dello Sport and Palazzetto dello Sport. Real architectural gems.
Though maybe the Olympic Village itself didn't age quite as well?
Perhaps not quite as gracefully as the ancient ruins, no. But the overall effort was significant.
So, when you wrap it all up, Rome, 1960, it feels like so much more than just sports. You've got the TV revolution, the Cold War politics boiling over, these incredible athletes becoming legends, the first real grappling with doping, and the city itself changing. Yeah. It really did kind of rewrite the story, didn't it?
It absolutely did. A pivotal moment, like you said at the start. You saw such incredible determination, performances that, well, we still talk about today that define greatness in so many ways.
So maybe something for you to think about. How much of what we saw in Rome, the media hype, the politics, the superstar athletes, the fight for fair play, how much of that still shapes the Olympics we watch now? What echoes from 1960 do you still see today? Thanks for listening to Sportpen.